Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We'll be getting started in approximately 5 minutes. So while you're waiting, if you'd like to participate in our iClicker questions, we've put the course information on the screen and the course link is also in your chat panel. You can use your instructor email and password to log in or create an account if you don't have one yet. It only takes about 30 seconds. You can also participate with your mobile device using the iClicker student app. You'll just want to look for Macmillan Learning as the institution and Encouraging Growth Mindsets as the course. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We'll be getting started in just a couple minutes. While you're waiting, um, there's course information on the screen for you, and the course link is also in your chat panel. So if you'd like to participate in our iClicker questions, you can follow those instructions. Use your email, your instructor email and password to log in or create an account if you don't have one yet with iClicker. You can also participate with your mobile device using the iClicker student app. Just look for Macmillan Learning as the institution and Encouraging Growth Mindsets as the course. Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for our webinar, Encouraging Growth Mindsets with Active Learning. Just a few quick announcements before we start the presentation. Once again, if you're just joining us now, we have put our iClicker course information on the screen and also in the chat panel of GoToWebinar. It is completely optional to participate, but it is a lot of fun, so we really do encourage you to join us. And even if you've never used iClicker before, it will only take 30 seconds or less to create a new iClicker account. So you can follow along with these instructions on the screen as I go through the rest of our housekeeping announcements. If you already have an instructor account with iClicker, you can use your instructor email and password to log in with the link in the chat panel. You can also participate with your mobile device using the iClicker student app, just to look for Macmillan Learning as the institution and Encouraging Growth Mindsets as the course. We have also muted everyone to keep out background noise, but we do want to hear from you. If you'd like to ask a question or give us any feedback, feel free to type it into the questions panel on your screen. We will be monitoring the questions as they come in, but we'll also be saving some for a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. If we don't get to your question in the webinar, we'll be sure to follow up with you by email. Finally, we are recording the webinar and we'll email you a link to the recording and the slide deck within the next few days. That's it for housekeeping. So with that, my name is Lindsay Thomas and I am the Training and Documentation Manager here at iClicker. I am very excited to introduce today's presenter, Natalie Dougal, who is our iClicker training specialist and faculty advocate and has experience using iClicker in the classroom. Take it away, Natalie.
All right, thank you, Lindsay. These are really fun webinars to do, and I'm really excited about this one. And it seems like there's been a lot of interest from our users in talking about growth mindsets. So this should be lots of fun today. So let's get to our agenda first. I always like to go over what we're going to talk about. We're just going to level set with a little bit of an overview of the growth mindset concept. So if you came into this webinar with no firm grasp on the concept, don't worry about it. We'll go over it lightly. And then we'll get into growth mindsets in the college classroom, and we'll talk about what it looks like to have a growth mindset encouraging instructor and what it looks like when a student exhibits a growth mindset. Then we'll talk about encouraging a growth mindset, specifically using iClicker as a tool. And I'll give you some ideas for iClicker activities for every classroom, regardless of what discipline that you're teaching. Lastly, we always love to end these webinars with Q&A. So if you came to this webinar today and you have a question about iClicker lingering in the back of your mind, or you have a question about growth mindsets already, throw it into the chat. We have people who are monitoring the chat, and at the end, we're going to get to a lot of your questions. And honestly, it's some of our favorite part of the webinar. So go ahead, throw those questions in there, and we'll definitely get to them by the end of our time together. But before we start dealing with the meat of our presentation, I want to take the pulse of this group, and I want to see how much you agree or disagree with the following statement. Learning comes easily to people who are gifted. So I'm going to open up my iClicker toolbar. I'm going to click on polling. And then this is a target question. So what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to touch on this scale where your response would be. So I just have target selected, and then I'm going to hit the play button. And this shows me what was sent to you as a student. So learning comes easily to people who are gifted. Just touch on this arrow, how much you agree or disagree with this statement, and then hit send. So I'm watching my responses come in. Great. Everybody who's in my session. And I'm going to be asking more questions like these. So if you missed this first question, you can go ahead and join our iClicker course in another tab very, very quickly. So I'm going to go ahead and stop it. And then I'm going to click on results to see how my group is interacting with this question. So I can see that we are literally all over the place. Some people agree very much with this question, while with this statement, while others really heartily disagree. And if this answer is correct, it's over here in disagreement when we think about someone who has a growth mindset. But because I'm just taking the pulse of this group, I'm going to give everybody points for being correct. Okay, I'm going to save this. All right, those with a growth mindset disagree with the idea that learning comes easily to people who are gifted, because they put more emphasis on effort and investment of time and energy than just being gifted. So these ideas come from Dr. Carol Dweck. She is a professor of psychology at Stanford University, and she's the author of this best-selling book called Mindset. You've probably seen it on shelves for years. It's been a bestseller for a very long time. And she has done over 40 years of research into the psychology of motivation and social development. And a ton of what she has been looking into is this idea of mindset, specifically how someone can have a growth mindset and use that mindset to achieve what they want in life. So I want to know how this group defines a growth mindset. So I'm going to go ahead and put up a short answer response, and I'm going to hit that play button again. And everyone that's participating gets a screenshot and can see this question, and then they're asked to respond with up to 140 characters like a tweet. I can see my responses come in real time. So my audience, I can see, is really thinking about this. Okay, I've got about 4 responses. I had 7 responses on the last one. And I had at least one person join our session since that last one. So I'm going to let this go for a full minute just to see if anybody else is joining the session or thinking. There we go. It's always nice to give people a little more time. Oh, good. All right, let's go ahead and stop it. All right, and then to look at my results, I just go ahead and click on results. Oh, there's some little accident or something. Um, so here I can go ahead and I can look at these different responses from my audience. And because I don't have a ton of people, I can go through and I can look at each of them one by one, believing that one can improve and learn from mistakes. Yes, this is evidence of a growth mindset. Knowledge skill is obtained by effort. Yes, this is part of a growth mindset. Working on improving all the time. Yes. Willingness to fail, to try again. So it looks like my audience has a really good understanding so far of what a growth mindset is. Minds are not set and can be molded given time and effort. Perfect. Open to learning. This one's a little vague. That's okay. I'm feeling generous. Open to learning. Yes, you have to have a certain openness to have a growth mindset. A belief that intelligence can grow like a muscle. Excellent. Curious, open to discovering new things. Curiosity can be the hallmark of a growth mindset. And again, I'm feeling generous. I'm going to put that in there. I can also add an other response if I want to, if I want to have an official definition for my students to study. I can also mark one answer as best with a blue star, and I'm going to give it to this one. Minds are not set and can be molded given time and effort. And if I'm having my students study my iClicker questions using study tools, they can use that as a flashcard. And that response that I put that blue star next to is going to be the one that shows up on the flashcard. Okay. So, how do we define a growth mindset? Our group had a really great working understanding of it. It is the belief that abilities can be developed with the investment of time and energy. So, abilities is very, very general. It's not limited to just intelligence. Okay. It can also apply to athletic endeavors. And, I have a really great growth mindset when it comes to learning and education. I always feel like, man, I can get better at things if I just put in that time and energy. When it comes to things that have to do with athleticism, I have much more of a fixed mindset. A fixed mindset is a mindset that believes that the way you are is the way you are, and it really doesn't matter what you do about it. You're either naturally gifted at it or you're not. And I have to admit, when it comes to things that are athletic in nature, I tend to think, well, I'm just not good at that. When really, if I put in that time and energy, I could develop my abilities. It also applies to things like creativity. There are people who will say you can develop your intelligence, you can develop your body, but you can't develop into a painter. You can't develop into an artist. Yes, you can. They're really anything that you put that time and energy into can be developed. It's an attitude that welcomes challenges as an opportunity to grow. So sometimes people go, a growth mindset is just like the power of positive thinking. And the thing about the power of positive thinking is that it crumbles up against a challenge. A growth mindset gets excited when something's going to be difficult. In our classrooms, students with a growth mindset are scholars. I love the word scholars. I want to bring it back. Who value preparation and effort over potential and natural gifts. We can all think about people that maybe we went to college or graduate school with who had amazing potential and natural gifts, but maybe they didn't do the prep, maybe they didn't put in the effort, maybe after school was done they weren't self-disciplined enough to continue doing what they had so much potential and natural gift to do. When you see people who go far, a lot of times it's people who maybe weren't the most naturally gifted, but they're the ones who put in the time and they put in the effort and they put in the preparation. That's how a growth mindset really changes how a student learns. So fill in the blank with something that you'll admit you maybe have a fixed mindset about. So I know what I would put in this blank, and it would be yoga. I see people who do yoga, and I think one must be naturally gifted at that to do it. This is a fun question just to kind of identify places where you might have a fixed mindset. And all of these activities are ones that you are free to borrow and try running with your students when you talk about a growth mindset. All right, we've got 4 people. And what's really great is I'm using the iClicker Instructor app to preview what everybody's saying and to kind of have an understanding of what's going on with my polling responses um, before presenting them to you all. So that's something that's really nice um, as a feature with iClicker. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop it. Let's look at our responses. Let's talk about where we might feel a little bit fixed in our mindset. Okay, boredom comes easily to people who are gifted. I like the literalness that this person took this question. That's true. Boredom does come easily to people who are gifted. And that's one of the challenges that we see with students in our class who are gifted. When they don't get challenged, especially when they don't get challenged until they hit the college level, a lot of times they can be extremely gifted, but once they hit a challenge, they really withdraw and have a hard time with it because suddenly it's not enough to be gifted. They're really going to have to put their shoulders into it. Music comes easily to people who are gifted. Uh, I've been working on my scales lately. Math, public speaking, playing music. Music's come up a few times. Languages, playing a musical instrument. This is really interesting. Web design. Let's see, did I get everything? Writing, fishing. I can also display these as a word cloud, which can be really fun, and we can kind of see what's coming up a lot and make it easy to discuss. Really cool. So, in your classroom, what messages do students get about the effort that your class will take? try and think about the specific messages that you give to students about the effort that they need to take when they're not in your classroom, when they're not standing right in front of you. So this is kind of an example of a 1-minute paper that you can do with students. It's okay to have an iClicker question be open for a decent amount of time. And as the instructor, especially if you're teaching online, you're doing like a Zoom class, this gives you a moment to maybe check the chat in your classroom. So you don't always have to race through your polling questions. You can do them quickly and efficiently, but you can also ask more probing questions that take a little more time. Let's see. Still got one person. Oh, one more person out there waiting, but I'm going to go ahead and close this. Okay. So let's look at the messages you all are sending your students. You get out what you put in. I like the attitude. Could be more specific. They will have to study daily. Okay, that's really specific. Effort is required. I encourage them to use study groups outside of class. Okay, I really like this one. This is nice and specific because one of the things that happens with students is when we say, hey, you got to put in what you get out what you put in, effort is required. They go, okay, but they don't necessarily know how to translate that into action, especially again, those really talented students who have a lot of potential. A lot of times their potential has not been tapped until they've gotten to the college level. And so they don't know what that effort looks like. They are depending on you as their instructor to make that effort a little bit more transparent. Students learn quickly that they have to be engaged in class. Okay, great. That's really great. A lot of students show up and they think it's going to be a passive activity to be in class. Here, they're stressing engagement. This class is hard and will take a lot of time. Being honest about how challenging your material is really important with students. Students, again, they want to be challenged and they want you to be honest about it. You must read, study the material in order to pass this class. Again, good, nice, specific. There will be several outside of class commitments. Good, specific. Practice makes perfect. Great. Hard work will make them a better professional, intentionally not using the word but in between. So lots of good information here. And, I want you to be thinking, how can I get even more specific? Study groups, that's great. Using study tools in iClicker. Tell your students, hey, I expect you the night before an exam to meet with other classmates and spend at least an hour doing flashcards. That's what I'm picturing my students are doing in their head. Are you doing that? You want to be really explicit about what efforts students need to take to be successful in your class. Okay, here's another question. Failure is an essential part of learning. This is another target question. I'm going to make it a target question. I'm going to hit that play button. I get a preview of what is sent to my students so I can be sure I sent the right thing. And now all you have to do is go ahead and touch where on this arrow your agreement or disagreement with this statement up here about failure is, and then hit in the send button. All right, we got 11 people now. Super fun. 13, great. It's great to have more people joining the iClicker session as we go along. 14, fabulous. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop it now. And let's go ahead and look at our results. Okay, I can see that our group is really understanding that failure is an essential part of learning. And I'm going to put my correct answer square over here. Sorry about that little guy over here. And I'm going to go ahead and save that response. And now I've graded all the results in the class. So this strong agreement with failure being an essential part of learning really indicates to me that you all understand how growth mindsets work. And also, you have not gotten to a level where you lead students without cultivating a growth mindset of your own to some extent. So, what do growth mindsets look like in the college classroom? Number one, it's not enough to just simply tell your student about a growth mindset. I've got a 9-year old right now, and I keep telling her about a growth mindset, and it's not getting through, people. I keep telling her about resilience and how she has to be flexible and failure is part of the process. But all I hear from her is, I am not good at division. It's not enough to just teach our students about it. We need to do more. We have to let our students know, and we need to share with them what specific efforts successful students put into your course. We need to be really explicit about it. Part of the way we do that is with our syllabi, putting in those really specific expectations. Um, but we should also be checking in throughout the term, and making points about effort, before every formal assessment. We should be doing it before they're turning in reports or essays or any kind of work that they're doing. We want to be specific and say, hey, listen, you want an A in this class? This is what A students do. And, your A students know that stuff. Your C students don't. Your C students kind of look at those A students and they might be assuming, well, they're just naturally good at it. It's sort of like dancing. When we see someone who is a remarkable dancer, we don't see the work they put into it. We just don't. And so when we try dancing ourselves, we think, well, I just stink at this. I'm not good. And that's because we haven't seen the effort and the time. So we really need to help those students who might be in that C level, they might be in that D and F level. And we need to say, hey, those students who are getting an A and a B in this class are not just naturally gifted. This is the effort they're putting in. So be explicit about that with your students. You want to give honest and constructive feedback. So sometimes we have this feeling, especially with our lower achieving students, that if we are honest with them, brutally honest is usually the phrase we use, that they will be so discouraged that they will just quit and they will never continue. Um, the truth is our students know when we are being dishonest with them and when we are giving them feedback made to make them feel better, not do better. So we need to be honest with our students and give them constructive feedback. And something that's really great about iClicker is it's a really great fast way to give honest and constructive feedback that isn't connected to a grade in the moment. If you give students an exam and the student gets the exam back and they get a low grade on it and they get a lot of questions wrong, they're just focused on that low grade. If they're in an iClicker session and they get 2 questions in a row wrong, and now the third iClicker question is up, they're thinking of it more as a game and they're thinking, I really want to get this right. And they're really focused on the problem at hand. Because they're getting honest feedback, they're getting constructive feedback, and they're getting just in time feedback as well. Have high standards and be explicit about what students need to do to reach them. I taught developmental writing for a long time. And I would have students who did not test into reading or writing at the college level, and they had one class that was designed to help them get up to that college level reading and writing. It did them no favors to lower the standards for them. It did them no favors to pretend that their writing was at a level that it was not. And I had to be extremely explicit with those students about what they had to do to get their writing skills to a college level. And again, the temptation might be to lower standards or to say, hey, I'm not going to be able to reach those students. But really, what we need to do is have those high standards because our students consistently surprise us, especially when we tell them how to get where we want them to go. And then lastly, you really want to normalize failure as part of the learning process. Failure is a really scary thing. Student gets an F is the plot of movies and television shows constantly. Um, the idea of failure is a really scary thing for a lot of our students. We need to make it normal because everyone who is engaged in deep learning has had to fail as part of the process. So, in your classroom, what do students learn when they get a question wrong? So, you can think about that as being a question on an exam or a question in class with iClicker. Any kind of question, when a student gets a question wrong, what do they learn from being wrong? My audience is thinking. This is a tough question. And this might be an area where you might feel a little challenged and go, I haven't really thought about what my students learn from getting something wrong. Okay. I'm getting interesting responses to this one. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and stop it. This is really fun. Let's go ahead and look at the result. Okay. So, how to put in effort to get a result. Okay. You want to make sure that you make that leap explicit for them. They learn where they might be making a mistake. So this is a really great use for iClicker questions, especially. One of the things that you can do with iClicker questions is when you write a multiple choice question is make one of the answers or all of the answers, wrong answers ideally, wrong answers that students find super, super tempting to give you that opportunity to be, hey, if you picked B, I understand why you picked B. Let's walk through the process that you used to get to B, and I'm going to show you where that mistake is. Here, I love that they just go, I don't know, they got a wrong answer. I mean, this is a challenge. It is a challenge to turn points of failure into your class into learning opportunities. Hopefully how to get it right the next time. This is ideal that they're going to learn how to get it right the next time. Where to go to find the correct answer, what the misunderstanding was, what the correct answer is, how to learn from their mistake and continue to develop understanding. That they'll remember the right answer next time they encounter that question, that they need to review the material again and take another try at the question. I haven't thought about this. I love it. Great. This is something to think about. What they need to put more effort into studying. They get feedback to understand what concept might still not be very clear, even if they thought it was. So there's a lot of different things that our students can take from a wrong answer. We just want to make sure that there is a message there, that it's something that you've thought, okay, when my student gets this wrong, what message are they taking about from it? We had a moment where I had to draw that little square around all the right answers for that question that I did about failure. And there was one little dot that was outside of that box. And, I really thought about that. I thought, what message did that one little red box get? What did they get when they weren't included? And I did do a little message, which was sorry. But, if we were in more of a serious sort of presentation and I was teaching topics to an audience that I knew more, I'd really want to know, okay, what message did that one red dot get there? Because it could be a big negative message or it could be a big learning opportunity for them. So how can we encourage a growth mindset with iClicker? Ask iClicker questions about how students are investing time and effort in your subject outside of class. So when I asked you all, hey, how are your students, how are they going to put in this effort? What explicit messages? Some people were kind of like, I don't really know. It was a little vague. The answer to this question is right in front of you. It's in your students. So you can just turn to them and say, hey, I want to know, what do you guys do to get ready for the midterm? And some of your students are really going to surprise you with their creativity, and they're going to surprise you with the amount of effort that they're putting in. It's also good to ask survey questions that are very general, like how many hours did you study for this exam? Or, how many hours did it take you to write this essay? Um, and it's really great for students who especially might say, oh, it took me 2 hours. Might be great for them to see some of those students put 20 hours into the work. That's something that's really important for students to see. You want to create tight and honest feedback loops with iClicker polling questions. So, in on a Friday, I can give quiz to a student, and if I work all weekend, I can give it back to them first thing on Monday. And that's a really tight feedback loop with a piece of paper. Um, but what happens is my students encounter the problems and the challenges on Friday. And when they get the quiz back on Monday, all they look at is the grade. And maybe they just stuff it in their bag and it's forgotten. With iClicker polling questions, you are able to present a question to your class and then let them know immediately whether or not their thinking was correct or incorrect. And so in that way, you're creating these really tight and honest feedback loops for students where, again, the focus is not on getting a certain grade, but it's about having an encounter with some challenging material. You want to make your iClicker questions truly challenging. Aim for a failure rate of 50%. That's right, I said it, 50%. And the reason that you want to do this is number one, you've got those high achieving students who are maybe not as challenged as they need to be, or they are encountering challenge for the first time, and you really need to teach them how to have a growth mindset. The other thing is you've got maybe middle achieving students who they need to be challenged as well with those high standards because they might surprise you and reach them. You should also use wrong answers as a jumping off point for things like peer instruction and class discussion. So again, one of the things that's really great is using the iClicker instructor app gives you a lot of ability to preview how your students are interacting with your iClicker polling questions. And it makes it so that you can choose to pick out comments, say in a short answer response, that are a jumping off point for class discussion. And again, that normalizes failure. You're going to say, hey, this person thought so and so was the antagonist. Let's talk about why people might feel that way, and then I'm going to talk about why that person is not the antagonist. And in that way, you really do engage everyone because you're not treating a wrong answer as if it is a pariah. Okay, here is another statement. Speed and perfection are the enemy of difficult learning. How much do we agree or disagree with this statement? So you just go ahead and touch where you feel your response should go, and then hit send. This group has done a lot of these so far, so I'm not surprised to see the responses coming in quickly. All right. Ooh, look at that. All right. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop it. Now let's go ahead and see our results. Okay, speed and perfection. It's all over the place. All right, this is a direct quote from Dr. Dweck in her book Mindset. All right, so I'm going to draw my agreement window right here, but I have to tell you, I find this statement challenging. I really do. Again, I've got that 9-year-old who's learning division, and she's also working through her multiplication as well, and they don't teach it like I used to. They don't have these kids just learn a bunch of math facts and send them on their way, because speed and perfection are the enemy of difficult learning. The way I learned really superficial math where I memorized a bunch of stuff and I was passed along in grades. And now my adult math is Terrible. I'll just tell you. And, I want to speed my daughter along on her journey to math. And that's the wrong approach. Speed and perfection are the enemy of difficult learning. And that's something that I'm challenged to remember about a growth mindset. So here are some iClicker activities you can use in every classroom, regardless of the subject you're teaching. You can use short answer polling questions to crowdsource your students for concrete, practical ways that they work to improve outside of class. Okay, so if they've got study groups going on, if they're using tutoring, maybe they're using certain videos. There are a lot of great people that are making material on YouTube that your students are using to supplement some of their education. Make it easy for your students to share the names of those people who are making good content because it's a great addition. Um, you also might have students break down the steps of a major project or what they're doing to prepare for something major in your exam using short answer polling questions. Okay, so a lot of times, again, those students with a fixed mindset, they approach things kind of as a one off. For example, writing an essay, somebody with a fixed mindset is going to write one draft and be done because this is who I am as a writer. I've written and I am done. Whereas when you look at students who are good academic writers, they have a writing process. One of the things that separate those two students is not necessarily giftedness, but a lot of times it's just not really knowing. And so sharing the fact that other students have a process of development for things outside of class is really illuminating, not just for their fellow students, but for you as an instructor. It's great to know what they're doing outside of class. Load your multiple choice responses with those truly tempting wrong answers. So I've used a lot of short answer in our time together today, and that's because I have a really great audience that is mature and articulate. Sometimes when you have a really big class of students, you want to focus it down a lot more. You want to make it so it's easier for you to control the narrative. So using wrong responses in your multiple choice responses is a really great way to have students pick the wrong answer and then have them learn from that failure. And I want to encourage you to try asking one impossible iClicker question a week. Normalize failure and again, let your students surprise you. Dweck has this really great anecdote about a math graduate student who came to class late and scrawled down two formulas off the blackboard, assuming they were the homework. They came back next week having solved the equations, only to find out that they were two equations that were kind of noted as being unsolvable. um, because the student didn't know that and didn't have a fixed mindset about these types of equations. He was able to solve these equations. So, ask questions where you think, oh, there's no way my students are going to understand this or know this. Let them surprise you. And then you can normalize failure if they don't get it. And then lastly, you can use iClicker assignments if you want some asynchronous engagement. So you might be teaching hybrid, or maybe you are teaching your students using video or something like that, and you're not able to use live polling. You can still use iClicker assignments with your students to be able to respond to iClicker questions as a way to engage. And so one of the things that I've done is I've actually taken the questions about growth mindsets that you might want to use with your students, and I've created an iClicker assignment in my iClicker course. So if you want to look at what that looks like, you can go ahead and again add this iClicker course, and then you can go ahead and look at what that assignment looks like in there. It might be something that you want to use with your students. And what's great is you could have them do it before they come to class that day, and then talk about growth mindsets. And so you could kind of frame their thinking about growth mindsets before they get to class. All right. Ooh, I feel like I've been talking a long time. What kind of questions and comments do we have?
All right. We have had a few questions come in already, but it's definitely not too late. If you have a question you'd like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the questions panel. This really is one of the one of our favorite parts of doing these webinars is hearing from you guys. All right, so first question. You mentioned that you were able to preview our results before displaying them to us. How can I preview my student responses before showing the results of my polls?
Great question. So what I have is on my phone, which obviously you cannot see, I am using the iClicker Instructor app. You can download that from the Google Play Store or from the Apple Store. And what it does is it takes remote control essentially of the desktop iClicker software. So all you have to do is log into the desktop software, start your class up, and then start the iClicker Instructor app. And I can start and stop polls with it. I can look at my roster. So that's really nice. I was able to see how many people were in my class in real time. I can preview results. I can turn on and off polls. I could turn on and off anonymous polls. And I can also take control of my presentation if I want to. I can advance my slides back and forth. So even though I'm just sitting here, I'm not walking around a classroom. It's a really great tool. If I was walking around a classroom, it would be a dream because I could stand at the back of the class and I could, see what my students are seeing from that perspective and run the iClicker polling questions. So yeah, it's cool.
Awesome. All right, so we've gotten a few sort of more pedagogical questions. So
Right.
one of the issues that we often have is that we encourage trying, but we only assess correct answers. There's no mark for effort. There are only marks for results. How do we address this in the class?
I think that's a super awesome question. Isn't that a pedagogical response? I think that is one of the ways that iClicker can really fill a niche in our classes, because the way that iClicker works is you can break down the scoring and you can make it so the scoring that I prefer, that I think is the most encouraging, is when students get 75% of a point of whatever your points are for just answering the question, for just trying. And then 25% for whether they get the question right or wrong. So there, if you look at the research around it, if you make polling just, hey, if you respond, good for you, here are all your points, what you see is students who are already maybe in that C or lower area kind of retreat a little bit and they don't necessarily engage with in-class polling the way that you would want. They start guessing a lot in their responses because if there's no cost to them, they don't kind of want to put in the ego kind of thing in really, really trying with polling. So that's something that we can see. We can see our lower confidence students kind of not engage as much with polling if we only make it about participation. The same thing happens if we make it all or nothing. If we say either you got the question right or you got the question wrong, then again, we see our lower achieving students guessing a lot when it comes to their responses on polling because they just don't want to risk it. The sweet spot seems to be give a lot of the points in polling for just participating. The bulk of them. 80% is nice. That means you get a B in polling just for showing up and answering the questions. And then you say, but you can get an A in it if you're getting a lot of the questions right. And that seems to be a real sweet spot because it keeps it fun, it keeps it positive. And that's something too we think a lot about with iClicker. We want iClicker to be a really fun, positive, motivating part of your class that doesn't feel punitive to students. So that's a recommendation that I have is really use iClicker's polling settings to give students a lot of points for participation and just a few points for being right.
All right, that's great. Thank you.
Mhm.
Another question, how do you explain or justify to students that they may face failure when some students are only thinking about their grades because they want to apply to competitive programs like med school or vet school?
Yeah, and I mean that is the That is the difficulty of teaching right now, is when you have those students who are those very high achieving students who their focus is maybe not on that deeper learning. And you know, the good thing is yes, normalize failure. Failure should be part of it. Um, but we also say to students, here is your pathway to success. Here is what you have to do to get to your understanding of that. The other thing is, that grading schema that I just suggested, where students get 80% of their iClicker points just for responding, and then they can get to 90 or 100% by being correct. That is something that a lot of your high achieving students feel very motivated by. And that feels like, this feels connected to their formal assessments. But if they get an answer wrong, it doesn't destroy their grades, and it can still be part of the learning process.
All right, great. And you've mentioned that you have a 9-year-old yourself. How do you find that the growth mindset reveals itself in elementary aged students?
So the funny thing is, growth mindsets is a big focus in K through 12 education now, and has been a very big trend for the last 10 years. So when I talk to my daughter about it, she's like, I know, Mom, we have posters about it on the wall and all this sort of stuff. And the thing about children is their brains literally are undeveloped. Their brains are in the process of development. So a lot of times when I'm working with children, and I also work with her Girl Scout troop, is we do talk about places where they have developed their skills through time and effort because they love it. So my daughter loves drawing, and her drawing skills have really developed. And I'll say, hey, you're a talented artist, but think about how much time you've put in. Let's talk about how much time you've put in. Let's talk about all those notebooks that are in your bedroom, full of drawings from when you were itty bitty bitty baby. And so a lot of times when we talk about time and effort, what's really good is to take something where someone is excelling already, and to show them where they're putting in that time and effort. Because a lot of times when we love what we're doing, we don't see it as time and effort. And so that can be a pathway to kind of showing any kind of young person, hey, you have a growth mindset in you have already acted with a growth mindset in this area, you just didn't know it yet. So I think that's a nice pathway.
All right, perfect. We have had a couple of people ask about the slide deck. And yes, just to reiterate, we are going to be sharing the slide deck and the recording by email with you in the next few days. But Natalie also mentioned that she put together all of these questions that you had a chance to participate in today. They're all in the assignment section of our iClicker course. Natalie, would you mind going back to the slide where you have the course information?
Sure,
Also
yeah,
in
let
the,
me
it
go
should be
on
in
back to
the chat panel of GoToWebinar.
okay, can I do this better? Nope, just
So
look away, everyone. We're going back to the future. Here we go.
there
It's
we go. Yeah.
Macmillan Learning, Encouraging Growth Mindsets with Natalie Dougal. And even after the course is over, if you're watching this on a
Yeah.
recording, you can add this and you'll still have access to the course. You can look at the polling questions we asked live in class, and you can also have access to the assignment as well. So feel free to do that. And speaking of which, I'm going to end our iClicker session right now, and I'm going to end it with an exit poll. So if you attended today, you have the opportunity to give me some feedback on today's iClicker session, and to rate your level of understanding of today's session. So that's something you can do with your students each day, and it's really nice to kind of bookend your classes that way, I think.
Yeah, that's a
So
great point.
yeah, what other
Okay,
questions?
we had a couple more sort of iClicker specific questions. So I've heard that iClicker can help create study guides for students. How does that work?
Yeah, iClicker Study Tools is really neat. Basically, what it is I'm just going to go ahead and show it to you. Students are able to take their class. Just going to go ahead and sign in, and they can come into their class. Oh, that's because I
Not that
removed
one.
myself. Let's see how fast I can do this. I bet I can do this real fast. I can show you my class right now. There we go. So you can see how fast this process is. So if you have students who haven't gotten into iClicker that first time, it's really easy to have them do it in class. They don't have to do it outside of class. Okay, so here I am as a student. I'm looking at my class as a student right now, and I can see, oh, I didn't get any points in that first polling session because I didn't attend class and I didn't come to class. Okay, I have a little more information. I'm going to click on my study tools right here. I don't have any questions because I haven't marked any of my classes yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on class history. I'm going to click on here where I missed a poll. Oh no. But what I can do is I can go through and I can mark my questions. Doop, wake up. Trying to wake this thing up. Okay. I can go ahead and I can mark my questions up here in the corner. And what that's going to do is it's going to add it to a flashcard pack for me. And I can study it in one of two ways. I can study it by using it as a flashcard where I just have my question here, and when I click on it, there's going to be that correct answer on the other side. So that's really nice, especially for short answer, because those are harder to do the other type, which is to use a practice test. And with a practice test, they need to match the exact answer. But this is something that students can fool around with, and they can build it from multiple sources as well. So it's really a nice tool for students to use. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, so a question about promoting discussion with polling questions. So,
Yeah.
um, do you have any tips for how to promote discussions with multiple choice questions? You don't want to, penalize students for wrong answers, but just to use them as a point for discussion when only a few students are sort of willing to participate.
So one of the things that's really great about iClicker is it gives every single student a voice in your class. So you're going to be surprised by students who suddenly speak up through iClicker who would never dare raise their hand in their class. And for the most part, what instructors see is asking short answers. You get a lot of really good participation. Yes, you are going to get some students who say, I don't know, or I didn't do the reading or something along that line. But I just remembered you're talking about multiple choice and you're not talking about short answer. Um, so with multiple choice, if you're asking questions, where there might be like sensitivity around that, it's just we have to be a little bit more sensitive, and we it's one of those things about active learning that is a challenge that we have to think about these things. So I think the thing that you're asking is a really good question. I don't think there's a neat answer to it. I don't know, Lindsay, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I'm trying to think of a good response too. I think, it's possible you could ask a multiple choice question, but then follow it up with a short answer question. If your students aren't participating, by speaking up, maybe they would be more comfortable speaking up through the short answer question type.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. And there's also, just to point out, we do offer an anonymous mode. So if students would feel even more comfortable responding, you wouldn't be able to associate their responses with their names, but that is another option.
That's an awesome point. Yeah.
All right, we have a couple more questions that have come in.
Okay.
Do students need to have more than one device in order to participate in polls?
Um, so there are, I'm sure, some instructors out there that are still requiring physical iClicker remotes. I know that that's something that instructors are still doing. For the most part, instructors now, especially if they're using iClicker Student and they're using iClicker Cloud, they're allowing students to use their phone, they can use a web browser, or they can use a tablet. they don't have to have multiple devices. It's whatever you allow in class and whatever they are comfortable with.
All right, perfect. And then just to add to that, if you are teaching online, so we sometimes recommend for these webinars, if you kind of think of yourself as being in the student's position, it's sometimes easy to watch the webinar on your computer, to participate, in our polling questions using your mobile device. But that's also not a requirement. You can do everything from a single device.
Yep.
And students can, they can use the app on laptops, tablets, or smartphones. Okay, last question that I can see, is iClicker used by the students as a subscription?
Yes, so students need to have a subscription to iClicker in order to use it. It is $15.99 for 6 months if they buy it through the Google Play Store or through Apple.
Mhm.
They can get a better deal through your college bookstore, through your Macmillan rep. It's bundled with a lot of Macmillan products. If you're teaching college success or you're teaching developmental English, I believe it's bundled for free.
Mhm.
And there are a lot of ways you can bundle it for $5 with a Macmillan product otherwise. We also have our digital solution for students called Achieve. And this is like a Swiss Army knife course management system tool that includes iClicker as part of the ways that we engage students. So Achieve is really cool. It's got digital ebooks. It's a homework solution. If you're really looking for something powerful and customizable for your class, I recommend looking at Achieve because it has iClicker with it. So there's a lot of different ways that students can get access to iClicker. We really work hard to keep it affordable. So, definitely get in touch with your Macmillan rep if you are looking to do like a bookstore deal or to bundle it with something else.
Yeah, exactly. And your rep can also notify you. There are a lot of departments and institutions out there that have actually licensed iClicker, so that students don't have to pay anything. So it's always good to check for that first.
Yeah, perfect.
And then, sorry, one last question. For someone who's never tried iClicker before, where could you go to get more information or to learn how to use it?
All right, just go to iClicker.com. It's really the only website you need to remember.
Mhm.
And you can see right here in the middle, you can book a demo. A demo is really great if you just want to see it for a few minutes and, really get that high level overview of it. If you are already committed and you're like, I'm ready to use this in our class, you can click that sign up for a demo or a training. Here you can sign up for a training with someone like me, Lindsay, our good friend Elena, who does amazing trainings, and they will get you all set up and ready to use iClicker in your classroom for the first time. So highly, highly recommend if you'd like more familiarity. And then we also have a ton of self-serve. So if you're somebody who is like, ooh, I don't want to meet with a person, um, you can just go to iClicker and click support. And we've got a ton of support articles. And you can just search for, how to set up your course. We've got videos, we've got click-throughs, all kinds of stuff. We want to serve everyone on every level.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll be including a link to the that demo sign up page in our follow-up email. So if you do want to book time with one of us, definitely um, feel free to do that. So
Yeah.
with that, I think that's all of our questions. So I just wanted to thank everyone for taking the time out of their day to join us for this webinar. We have been very excited. I know we did have to reschedule this, and we're glad that you all came to our rescheduled date.
Yes,
Once again, if
definitely.
you do have any other questions after our session today, please do feel free to respond to that follow-up email, and we'll get your questions to the right place. So thanks for joining, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Have a good weekend.
All right, bye.